Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping back 5,000 years to ancient Sumer, where getting married was less like finding your soulmate, and more like signing a business contract written in your own blood. If you're enjoying these deep dives into history's darker corners, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Drop your city and what time it is where you're watching in the comments. It's always amazing to see how we're all connected across time zones while exploring the past together. You wake up in ancient Sumer, 3000 BCE, and today is your wedding day. Congratulations, you've just won a lottery nobody wanted to enter. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon, but your stomach already feels like it's hosting a wrestling match between anxiety and yesterday's barley porridge. Your sleeping mat is woven reed, about as comfortable as a modern yoga mat made of sandpaper. The walls around you are mud brick, still damp from the morning dew that seeps through like unwanted advice from relatives. You can hear the Euphrates River flowing nearby, its gentle murmur the only peaceful sound you'll hear today. Your parents negotiated this marriage 6 months ago. You weren't consulted, obviously. That would be like asking your smartphone if it wants to update. The decision was made by people who think they know what's best for you. The bride price was settled at 2 sheep, a silver ring, and a promise that your family wouldn't raid their grain stores during the next harvest. The woman you're marrying is a complete stranger. You've seen her exactly once, at the marketplace, where she was buying dates and looking about as thrilled as someone shopping for tax forms. Her name is Ningal, which means great lady, though you suspect the irony wasn't intentional. In Sumerian society, women had limited legal rights under patriarchal systems. You pull yourself up from your mat, and your back cracks like kindling. The morning air tastes of dust and anticipation, with just a hint of the fish and sewage cocktail that defines riverside living in the ancient world. Your mother appears in the doorway, carrying a bowl of what passes for breakfast. Barley gruel that looks like wet cement, and probably tastes like regret. Today's ceremony will bind you legally, religiously, and socially. Divorce exists in theory, but it's about as accessible as customer service at a Sumerian telecommunications company. If your wife fails to produce children, you can take a second wife. If she commits adultery, she faces trial by ordeal according to legal customs. If you commit adultery, you pay a fine and everyone moves on with their lives. The wedding contract has already been carved into a clay tablet by the local scribe, a man whose handwriting looks like chickens walked across wet concrete. This tablet will govern every aspect of your married life: what property you own, what happens to your belongings when you die, and how many sheep your wife is worth, if you decide to trade her in for a newer model. Your future mother-in-law arrives early, carrying the morning's first serving of criticism. She examines your family's house like a health inspector who's already decided to shut you down. Her eyes linger on the cracks in the walls, the threadbare rugs, and your father's attempt to look prosperous in a tunic that's been mended more times than a politician's promises. The bride price negotiation resurfaces briefly when she notices your family's offering includes only 2 sheep, instead of the 3 she originally demanded. Your father explains that 1 sheep died of natural causes, by which he means it was probably sold to buy date wine for courage. The discussion becomes heated, with voices rising like steam from hot barley. Meanwhile, you're standing there like a spectator at your own execution, watching adults haggle over your future like merchants arguing over the price of pottery. Your bride-to-be arrives looking pale and resigned, her eyes holding the same expression you'd expect from someone being fitted for a burial shroud. The neighbourhood gathers to witness this joyous occasion, bringing with them the subtle scent of unwashed bodies and the loud opinions of people who've never successfully managed their own marriages. Children run between the adults, laughing and playing, blissfully unaware that they're witnessing what might be the last day of your freedom. This is ancient Sumerian marriage, where love is optional, consent is negotiable, and happiness is about as common as air conditioning in the desert. You're sitting cross-legged on a woven mat while the scribe reads your marriage contract aloud. His voice drones like a broken air conditioner, listing terms and conditions that would make modern lawyers weep with envy. This isn't a marriage certificate. It's a comprehensive manual for structured misery. The tablet specifies that your wife must produce a male heir within 3 years, or you're legally entitled to take a second wife. It's like a warranty on a household appliance, except the appliance has feelings and the warranty expires faster than milk in the desert sun. If she bears only daughters, well, congratulations. You've just collected a set of future dowry payments. Ningal sits beside you, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles have gone white. She's wearing her finest dress, a linen garment dyed with expensive indigo that her family probably saved for months to afford. The fabric whispers against her skin when she shifts uncomfortably, a sound like secrets being told to empty rooms. The contract continues with provisions about property. Everything you owned as a bachelor becomes jointly held, which sounds progressive until you realise that jointly held means your wife gets to use things while you make all decisions about them. She can tend the barley fields, but you decide when to plant. She can weave textiles to sell, but you control the profits. It's like being given permission to drive a car you'll never own. Your father-in-law interrupts the reading to clarify a clause about livestock management. Apparently, if any of your sheep die under suspicious circumstances, your wife's family can demand compensation. This leads to a brief but heated discussion about what constitutes suspicious circumstances. Does old age count? What about wolves? What if a sheep simply decides it's had enough of ancient Mesopotamian life and wanders into traffic? The religious obligations come next. You and your wife must make monthly offerings to Inanna, goddess of love and fertility, which feels like paying protection money to cosmic forces. The offerings aren't cheap. Dates, barley, oil, and occasionally a young goat that your budget really can't accommodate. It's like maintaining a subscription service for divine approval. Ningal speaks for the first time during the entire ceremony, asking about the clause regarding her personal belongings. The scribe explains that she can keep her jewellery and weaving tools, but everything else becomes marital property. Her face shows the exact expression you'd expect from someone discovering their subscription auto-renewed for something they never wanted. The adultery clauses are particularly creative. If your wife is unfaithful, she faces trial by water ordeal according to legal customs. If you're unfaithful, you pay a fine equal to 2 months' worth of barley. The gender equality in ancient Sumer is about as balanced as a shopping cart with 3 wheels. Your new mother-in-law provides running commentary throughout the reading, offering suggestions for additional clauses that would make your life more complicated. She's particularly concerned about laundry procedures and cooking standards, as if micromanagement could be legally mandated through clay tablet legislation. The divorce provisions are read with the enthusiasm of someone describing terminal illness. Divorce is possible, but it requires proving serious misconduct, and the bar for serious misconduct is set somewhere between actual crime and disappointing your parents. If you divorce, your wife keeps her dowry but loses access to your property. If she divorces you, she forfeits everything and returns to her family in shame, like unsatisfactory goods being returned. The ceremony reaches its climax when both families exchange gifts that nobody can really afford. Your family presents a silver bracelet that represents 3 months of careful saving. Her family offers a wooden chest that took her father half the summer to carve. These gifts will be displayed prominently in your home as daily reminders of the financial sacrifices that made this union possible. The scribe seals the tablet with official markings and declares you legally bound. The crowd cheers with the enthusiasm of people celebrating someone else's problems. Children throw flower petals that immediately stick to everyone's sweaty skin in the desert heat. You look at your new wife, and she looks back at you. Both of you wearing expressions like people who've just signed up for a gym membership they know they'll never use. This is the beginning of your married life, bound together by law, tradition, and a clay tablet full of fine print that would challenge a team of modern attorneys. Your new home is a modest mud brick structure that smells like dried river clay and crushed hopes. The walls are thick enough to keep out most of the desert heat, but thin enough that your neighbours can hear every argument, every sob, and every moment of awkward silence that will define your married life. You carry Ningal across the threshold, a tradition that's supposed to symbolise protection and prosperity, but feels more like carrying evidence of a crime you didn't commit. She's lighter than you expected, probably because anxiety has been eating away at her appetite for weeks. Her body is rigid in your arms, like holding a bundle of kindling wrapped in expensive cloth. The house tour takes approximately 30 seconds. There's a main room with a fire pit, a smaller sleeping area, and a corner designated for food storage that's currently as empty as a politician's promises. The roof is flat clay, perfect for collecting rainwater or contemplating the life choices that brought you here. Your wedding gifts are already arranged along one wall: clay pots, wooden bowls, woven baskets, and farming tools that look like instruments of agricultural torture. Everything you need to build a life together, assuming your definition of life includes subsistence farming and pretending to be happy about it. Ningal examines the cooking area with the critical eye of someone evaluating a potential crime scene. The fire pit is surrounded by stones that have seen better days, and the grinding stone for barley looks like it hasn't been properly cleaned since the invention of agriculture. She runs her finger along the edge of a clay pot and finds enough dust to write her name in, which she doesn't. The sleeping arrangements become an immediate source of tension. There's one sleeping mat, woven from river reeds, and about as comfortable as trying to nap on a pile of broken pottery. You'll be sharing this space with someone you barely know, expected to create intimacy and surroundings that feel more like a primitive prison than a love nest. The water situation requires daily trips to the communal well, a 20-minute walk each way carrying clay jugs that seem designed to test your commitment to hydration. The well serves 30 families, which means water collection becomes a social event where everyone discusses everyone else's business with the enthusiasm of ancient gossip columnists. Food preparation starts before dawn and continues until after sunset. Barley must be ground daily, bread must be baked in the communal oven, and vegetables must be tended in the small garden plot behind your house. It's like running a restaurant where the only customers are yourselves and the portions are disappointingly small. Your wife's adjustment to married life resembles someone learning to navigate a maze designed by someone who actively dislikes them. She arranges and rearranges the household items, trying to create efficiency in a space that defies logical organisation. Every movement is careful, calculated, like she's walking through a room full of hidden traps. The first meal you share as married couple is barley stew with onions and whatever herbs could be gathered from the riverside. It tastes like liquid cardboard seasoned with good intentions. You eat in silence, the only sounds being the scrape of wooden spoons against clay bowls and the distant murmur of the Euphrates. Evening brought the transition to shared household life between relative strangers. The customs of the time emphasize private confirmation of marriage according to local tradition, though the emotional adjustment required time and patience for both partners. The night sounds of ancient Sumer filter through your thin walls: dogs barking, children crying, adults arguing, and the occasional splash from the river as someone dumps waste or draws water. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by unfamiliar breathing patterns and the reality that you're now sharing your life with someone whose dreams and nightmares you don't yet understand. Morning arrives with the same relentless certainty as tax season, bringing another day of navigating this new reality. You wake up married, bound by law and custom to make this arrangement work regardless of compatibility, affection, or basic human happiness. Your wife stirs beside you, and for a moment, you both lie still, pretending sleep might somehow provide an escape from the waking world. This is your new normal, a life built on obligation, maintained through duty, and sustained by the hope that familiarity might eventually breed something resembling contentment. Welcome to ancient Sumerian marriage, where "till death do us part" isn't a romantic promise, but a realistic timeline for escape. The morning after your wedding, you discover that your wife comes with a price tag more detailed than a modern car lease agreement. The bride price your family paid wasn't just a one-time payment. It was the down payment on a lifetime subscription to someone else's problems. You're sitting in the courtyard of your father-in-law's house, participating in the post-wedding financial review. Think of it as a performance evaluation for a transaction involving human beings. The morning sun beats down on clay tablets covered in cuneiform script that details every sheep, every silver ring, and every promise that changed hands to secure your matrimonial arrangement. Your father-in-law, Uananshi, spreads the contracts on a woven mat like a merchant displaying his finest goods. His fingers trace the wedge-shaped marks with the satisfaction of someone reading a favourable stock report. These tablets don't just record a marriage, they document the transfer of ownership of a human being who happens to have feelings about the transaction. The bride price breakdown reads like an ancient invoice. 2 healthy sheep valued at 4 measures of barley each, 1 silver ring, weight verified by the temple scales, a promise to provide 3 measures of dates annually for the next 5 years, A commitment to allow your wife's family access to your well during drought seasons. It's like signing up for a subscription box service where the contents include a lifetime of family obligations. Ningal sits silently beside you, her presence acknowledged about as much as you'd notice furniture during a business meeting. Her dowry is inventoried with clinical precision. 3 goats, 2 copper pots, a set of weaving tools, and enough linen cloth to outfit a small household. She watches her possessions being catalogued like items at an estate sale for someone who isn't dead yet. The most disturbing clause involves her reproductive obligations. The contract specifies that failure to produce children within 3 years triggers a penalty system that would make modern debt collectors weep with admiration. If she remains childless, your family must provide an additional goat annually until a child is born. If she produces only daughters, the payments continue until a son arrives. It's a fertility insurance policy where the premium is paid in livestock and dignity. Your mother-in-law, Nin Banda, contributes her expertise in the fine art of making everyone uncomfortable. She reminds everyone present that her daughter has been trained in all necessary domestic skills: cooking, weaving, child-rearing, and the subtle art of maintaining silence when men are discussing important matters. She lists these accomplishments like features on a household appliance. The discussion turns to property rights, and you discover that your wife legally owns nothing except her personal clothing and jewellery. Everything else she uses, tools, furniture, even the food she prepares, belongs to you. She's like a highly skilled employee with no salary, no benefits, and a lifetime contract with no possibility of promotion. The maintenance costs are explained with mathematical precision. Your wife requires approximately 2 measures of barley per month, plus oil, dates, and occasional access to meat during festivals. Her clothing needs replacement annually, and her healthcare consists of prayers to Inanna and whatever herbal remedies the neighbourhood wise woman can provide. It's like calculating household expenses for a family member whose contributions were precisely measured by social customs. Quality control measures are built into the arrangement. If your wife proves unsatisfactory in any way, poor cooking, inadequate housekeeping, failure to show proper respect to your family, her relatives are obligated to provide remedial training or accept her return like unsatisfactory goods. The warranty period extends for the first year of marriage, after which all sales become final. The conversation includes detailed discussion of your wife's resale value should the marriage fail. Divorce requires returning most of the dowry, but usage depreciation is calculated based on years of marriage, number of children produced, and general wear and tear. It's like trading in a vehicle where the mileage includes emotional baggage and the trade-in value decreases with every domestic argument. Your new father-in-law concludes the meeting by reminding you that you've made an excellent investment. His daughter has been raised specifically for marriage, trained from childhood in the skills necessary to maintain a household and produce healthy offspring. She's like a purpose-built machine designed for domestic productivity, except machines don't have feelings about their working conditions. As the meeting ends, you glance at Ningal, who has maintained perfect composure throughout this formal discussion of marriage arrangements. Her eyes reveal nothing, but you notice her hands are clenched tightly enough to leave nail marks in her palms. You realise you've just participated in the complex negotiations that defined ancient marriage contracts. The dowry system in ancient Sumer operates like a reverse lottery, where everyone loses, especially the women. You're discovering that your wife's dowry isn't a gift. It's a financial trap disguised as generosity, complete with hidden fees and penalty clauses that would make a credit card company blush. 3 days into married life, you're sitting with Ningal in your courtyard, taking inventory of her dowry items like accountants auditing a bankruptcy. Each item comes with an invisible price tag of expectations, obligations, and social pressure that threatens to crush you both under its weight. The 3 goats she brought are already causing problems. They're not just livestock, they're living symbols of her family's investment in your marriage. If any of them die, get stolen, or fail to reproduce, you're expected to compensate her family with equivalent value. It's like being given a gift that comes with a monthly subscription fee and a liability clause. Her copper pots are beautiful, decorated with intricate patterns that took skilled craftsmen weeks to create. They're also completely impractical for daily cooking, too valuable to risk damaging, too precious to actually use. They sit in your house like museum pieces, reminding you daily that you can't afford to live up to the standards they represent. The weaving tools tell their own story of economic manipulation. Her loom is a masterpiece of engineering, capable of producing textiles fine enough to trade with merchants from distant cities. The expectation is that she'll use it to supplement your household income, effectively making her dowry items tools for generating profit for your family. It's like receiving a laptop as a wedding gift with the understanding that you'll use it to work from home for free. Ningal's jewellery collection represents more wealth than your family has ever possessed. Her silver bracelets, copper rings and beaded necklaces could feed your household for months if sold. But selling them would be social suicide, admitting that you can't provide adequately for a wife whose family has already demonstrated their superior financial resources. The linen cloth she brought is woven so finely it feels like touching clouds, if clouds were made of thread, and cost more than most people's houses. There's enough fabric to outfit a small army, but using any of it for daily purposes would be like burning money to stay warm. It sits folded in wooden chests, growing more valuable and less practical with each passing day. The most insidious aspect of the dowry system becomes clear when you realise it's designed to keep your wife financially dependent while simultaneously making you responsible for maintaining assets you never asked for. If the marriage fails, she takes the dowry with her, leaving you worse off than when you started. If the marriage succeeds, you spend your life protecting investments that don't really belong to you. Your neighbours provide running commentary on your wife's dowry with the subtlety of sports commentators. They compare her possessions to other brides, analyse the quality of her family's contributions, and speculate about what the dowry reveals about your family's social standing. It's like having your financial situation broadcast on ancient Mesopotamian social media. The pressure to maintain and increase the dowry's value creates constant anxiety. Every decision about household expenses must consider the impact on these precious items. You can't eat well, because money spent on food can't be invested in protecting the goats. You can't buy new clothes because every copper coin must be saved in case one of the pots gets damaged. Ningal understands the trap better than you do. She watches you struggle with the financial burden her dowry represents, knowing that its purpose was never to benefit your marriage, but to demonstrate her family's wealth and ensure their continued influence over your household. She's like a financial advisor, whose advice benefits everyone except the people she's supposedly helping. The anniversary of your wedding approaches, and with it, the realization that the dowry system has transformed your home into a museum where you're both visitors who aren't allowed to touch anything. You're surrounded by wealth you can't use, maintaining possessions that own you more than you own them. The final insult comes when you discover that other families are already asking about your future children's dowries, assuming that your prosperity, represented by items you're afraid to use, indicates your ability to provide similar arrangements for the next generation. The cycle continues, ensuring that the dowry death trap will claim future victims long after you're gone. 6 months into your marriage, you realise that producing children isn't just expected, it's mandated by a timeline that would challenge modern fertility specialists. Ancient Sumerian society treats human reproduction like a manufacturing process with quotas, deadlines, and quality control measures that would make a factory supervisor proud. You're standing in the temple of Inanna, goddess of fertility, holding a clay figurine shaped like a pregnant woman, while the priestess explains the cosmic importance of getting your wife pregnant immediately. The temple smells like incense mixed with desperation, and the walls are covered with offerings from couples whose biological clocks are apparently ticking louder than a doomsday countdown. The social pressure begins before your wedding night ends. Your mother arrives 3 days into your marriage with helpful advice about fertility enhancement, including dietary recommendations that taste like punishment and positioning suggestions that would require engineering degrees to implement safely. She's like a medieval sex education teacher, whose curriculum was designed by people who've never actually enjoyed the process. Ningal's monthly cycles become community property, discussed with the same attention to detail that modern meteorologists give to hurricane tracking. Your mother-in-law appears monthly to inquire about reproductive progress, with the subtlety of a tax auditor investigating suspicious deductions. Her questions are clinical, invasive, and delivered with the cheerful enthusiasm of someone discussing crop yields. The 3-year deadline for producing a male heir looms over your marriage like a sword suspended by divine thread. If Ningal fails to deliver a son within the specified timeframe, you're legally entitled to take a second wife. This isn't presented as an option, but as an inevitable escalation. like upgrading your software when the current version stops working properly. The math of Sumerian reproduction is brutally simple. Average life expectancy is roughly 35 years. Women typically marry around age 16, and are expected to produce children immediately and continuously until death or menopause, whichever comes first. It's like running a sprint race where the finish line is measured in decades and the prize is societal approval. Your wife's value as a human being is directly proportional to her ability to produce male offspring. Daughters are considered consolation prizes, valuable for their future dowries but not counted toward fulfilling the primary reproductive contract. It's a scoring system where half the possible outcomes don't count and the stakes increase with every failed attempt. The fertility treatments available in ancient Sumer range from prayer to herbal remedies that taste like liquefied suffering. The local wise woman, Nin Lil, provides consultations that involve examining sheep entrails, reading omens in oil patterns and prescribing concoctions made from ingredients you hope she's not making up on the spot. Religious obligations multiply with each passing month of non-pregnancy. Additional offerings to Inanna, pilgrimages to fertility shrines, and participation in seasonal ceremonies designed to encourage divine intervention in your reproductive efforts. It's like paying subscription fees to multiple apps that all promise to solve the same problem with varying degrees of supernatural assistance. The psychological toll on Ningal becomes visible in ways that break your heart. She measures her worth by the absence of morning sickness, counts days with the precision of an ancient calendar keeper, and approaches each month's disappointment with the resignation of someone expecting failure. Her self-worth is tied to biological processes beyond her control. Community involvement in your reproductive efforts reaches levels that would violate modern privacy laws. Neighbours offer unsolicited advice, elderly women share stories of their own fertility struggles, and local priests provide blessings that come with detailed instructions for implementation. It's like having a support group composed entirely of people who think they're helping but are actually making everything worse. The backup plan discussions begin before the first year ends. Your father mentions the availability of suitable second wives with the casualness of someone discussing backup generators. He's not being cruel. He's being practical in a society where male heirs determine inheritance, social status, and family survival. Ningal knows about these conversations. She hears the whispers, sees the glances, understands that every month without pregnancy brings her closer to being replaced rather than supported. She's competing in a race where the rules are rigged, the judges are biased, and losing means sharing her husband with a younger, potentially more fertile replacement. The pressure transforms your marriage from a partnership into a business arrangement focused on producing specific outcomes within predetermined timeframes. Love becomes secondary to logistics, intimacy becomes scheduled around optimal fertility windows, and your relationship becomes a case study in how societal expectations can destroy the very bonds they're designed to strengthen. In ancient Sumer, your wife's legal status falls somewhere between valuable livestock and household furniture. Technically protected, but not exactly empowered. The law codes that govern your marriage read like instruction manuals for operating human beings, complete with warranty information and troubleshooting guides. You're sitting in the city courthouse, a mud brick building that smells like official documents and broken dreams, listening to the judge explain your wife's legal rights. The list is shorter than a grocery receipt, and about as satisfying. She can own jewellery, personal clothing, and the right to breathe. But even that last one comes with terms and conditions. The Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the earliest legal documents in human history, treats wives like sophisticated farming equipment. They require maintenance, produce valuable outputs, and can be traded or upgraded under specific circumstances. The legal language is precise, clinical, and completely devoid of any recognition that these property items have feelings about their working conditions. Ningal can't buy property without your consent, can't enter contracts without your signature, and can't travel beyond the city limits without written permission from you or your father. She's like a person-shaped passport that requires constant validation from male authorities. Her freedom of movement is restricted to a radius that makes modern ankle monitors look generous. If someone damages your wife, through assault, insult, or improper advances, they pay damages to you, not to her. She's not the injured party, she's the damaged goods. The compensation rates are calculated based on her social status, reproductive potential, and current market value for wives of similar quality. It's personal injury law where the person isn't considered a person. The inheritance laws reveal the full scope of legal creativity in minimising women's rights. When you die, your property passes to your sons, with provisions for your wife's maintenance that resemble a pension plan designed by people who actively dislike retirees. She gets housing, food allowances, and the privilege of spending her widowhood managing assets she'll never own. Your wife's testimony in legal proceedings carries exactly half the weight of yours, and only if corroborated by male witnesses. Her word alone isn't sufficient to prove anything more significant than the weather. She could witness a murder, experience theft, or observe fraud, but without male confirmation, her account is considered unreliable hearsay from someone whose brain is apparently too small to process reality accurately. The adultery laws showcase the legal system's commitment to gender equality through completely unequal treatment. If your wife commits adultery, she faces trial by ordeal, public humiliation, and possible death. If you commit adultery, you pay a fine roughly equivalent to the cost of a decent sheep. The justice system operates on a sliding scale where the slide is greased with centuries of institutionalized misogyny. Marriage contracts include clauses that would make modern prenups look like love letters. Your wife agrees to obey all reasonable commands, maintain household standards to your family's satisfaction, and produce children according to the predetermined schedule. Failure to meet these contractual obligations triggers penalty clauses that range from financial compensation to outright replacement. The legal definition of reasonable force allows you to discipline your wife for unsatisfactory performance, with guidelines that read like employee handbook sections written by psychopaths. Physical correction is permitted for serious infractions like burning dinner, showing disrespect to your mother, or failing to maintain appropriate levels of submissive gratitude for the privilege of being married. Property damage caused by your wife becomes your financial responsibility, but she has no legal standing to seek compensation for damages done to her. If someone breaks her weaving loom, they pay you for the lost productivity. If someone breaks her arm, they pay you for the temporary reduction in household services. She's insured like equipment, not protected like a person. The court system provides dispute resolution services for marital conflicts, with mediation procedures that resemble customer service calls to companies that have already decided the customer is wrong. Judges listen to complaints with the patience of people being paid to pretend they care, then issue rulings based on precedents established by previous judges who also didn't particularly care. Legal separation is possible under circumstances so extreme, they make divorce look like a casual breakup. Your wife can petition for separation if you sell her into slavery, repeatedly attempt to murder her, or convert to a different religion. The bar for intolerable behaviour is set so high that most forms of routine misery are considered normal operating conditions. The enforcement mechanisms for these laws rely on community pressure and social consequences rather than police intervention. Violations are punished through public shaming, economic sanctions, and exclusion from religious ceremonies. It's a justice system where the punishment is having everyone you know agree that you're terrible, which in a small community is surprisingly effective. Divorce in ancient Sumer is theoretically possible in the same way that time travel is theoretically possible. The concept exists, but the practical implementation requires circumstances so extraordinary that most people die waiting for them to occur. You're discovering that the legal pathways to marital dissolution are designed like obstacle courses created by people who believe marriage should be a permanent prison sentence with occasional visiting privileges. The divorce laws read like escape room instructions written by someone who doesn't want anyone to escape. The grounds for divorce are so restrictive, they make joining an exclusive country club look accessible. Your wife can petition for divorce if you sell her into slavery, which is helpful since slavery is still legal and apparently considered a reasonable response to marital dissatisfaction. She can also request dissolution if you repeatedly try to murder her, though the legal definition of repeatedly requires documentation that most murder victims find difficult to provide. Religious conversion provides another pathway to divorce, but only if you abandon the state religion for something the community considers genuinely heretical. Converting to worship a different Sumerian god doesn't count. You have to go full apostate, preferably in ways that involve denying the existence of all recognized deities. It's like requiring someone to become an atheist in a society where atheism is punishable by death. The procedural requirements for filing divorce papers make modern bureaucracy look efficient. You need testimony from multiple witnesses, documentation of the specific offences, approval from both families, and a ruling from the temple priest confirming that the gods support your petition. It's like applying for a mortgage where the bank requires divine intervention as collateral. Financial penalties for divorce ensure that even successful petitioners end up worse off than when they started. The husband must return the dowry, compensate the wife's family for breach of contract, and pay court fees that could bankrupt a merchant. The wife forfeits all marital property, loses access to her children, and returns to her family with the social status of damaged goods. Your wife's options for initiating divorce are even more limited. She can't file petitions without male representation, can't testify on her own behalf without corroboration, and can't retain legal counsel without your permission. It's like being required to ask your captor for help, escaping from captivity, with the understanding that they have every incentive to refuse. The social consequences of divorce extend beyond the immediate parties to include their families, friends, and business associates. Divorced individuals become social pariahs, excluded from religious ceremonies, rejected as marriage prospects for their relatives, and viewed with suspicion in all business dealings. It's like being placed on a community blacklist that affects multiple generations. Alternative dispute resolution services exist for couples seeking to avoid the formal divorce process, but these mediation services are provided by the same family elders who arranged the marriage in the first place. It's like asking the people who sold you a defective product to help you return it for a refund, when they've already spent your money and forgotten your name. The waiting periods for divorce proceedings can extend for years while courts investigate claims, families negotiate settlements, and religious authorities consult with deities who apparently have very busy schedules. During this time, both parties remain legally married but practically separated, living in a limbo that combines the worst aspects of marriage and divorce without the benefits of either. Mutual consent divorce is theoretically the simplest option, but requires both parties to agree on terms that protect the interests of their respective families, while satisfying legal requirements that seem designed to prevent agreement. It's like trying to negotiate a peace treaty between countries that are required by law to remain at war. The appeals process for divorce rulings provides multiple opportunities for dissatisfied parties to extend proceedings indefinitely. Each appeal requires additional fees, more witnesses, and longer delays, while courts reconsider decisions they probably got wrong the first time. Justice delayed is justice denied, but divorce delayed is marriage prolonged, which serves the interests of a society that believes suffering builds character. Most marriage disputes are resolved through informal arrangements that avoid the legal system entirely. Couples simply separate without official documentation, understanding that resuming their previous lives is impossible, but recognizing that formal divorce is even less practical. They become marital refugees, living in permanent exile from both marriage and singlehood. The ultimate irony of Sumerian divorce law is that it's most accessible to people wealthy enough not to need it. The poor remain trapped in unhappy marriages by economic necessity, while the rich can afford the fees, delays, and social consequences required to legally end relationships that have become unbearable. Justice scales according to income, and freedom costs more than most people can afford. In ancient Sumer, the legal penalties for various marital infractions create a justice system where many wives discover that accidental death might be preferable to intentional punishment. The punishment matrix reads like a sadistic game show, where every wrong answer leads to progressively worse consequences. You're witnessing a trial in the city square, where a woman named Nin Sun faces charges of adultery. The proceedings unfold with the procedural efficiency of people who've turned human suffering into an administrative process. The crowd gathers with the enthusiasm of spectators at entertainment events, because public humiliation is apparently recreational viewing in ancient Mesopotamia. The evidence against Nin's son consists of testimony from neighbours who claim they saw her speaking privately with a man who wasn't her husband. No physical evidence, no confession, just accusations from people whose qualifications as witnesses include having functioning eyeballs and strong opinions about other people's business. The legal standards for conviction would make modern prosecutors weep with envy. Certain legal proceedings involved ordeal-based determinations that reflected the period's approach to justice, which differed significantly from modern legal principles. The outcomes of such trials were considered divine judgment according to contemporary beliefs. Your wife watches these proceedings with the fixed attention of someone studying for an exam she hopes never to take. She understands that the same laws governing Ninson's fate apply to her own life, creating a constant awareness that any accusation, however false, could result in a swimming test she's not trained for. The spectacle serves multiple purposes beyond entertainment. It reinforces community standards, demonstrates the consequences of violating social norms, and provides object lessons for other wives who might be considering independent thought or unauthorized social interaction. It's educational programming for a society that believes fear is an effective teaching tool. The alternative punishments for lesser offences create a menu of misery that covers every possible marital infraction. Disrespecting your husband earns public flogging. Burning dinner repeatedly results in temporary banishment from the household. Showing insufficient enthusiasm for reproductive duties triggers interventions from female relatives who consider sexual coaching a community service. Ningal's reaction to these proceedings reveals the psychological toll of living under laws designed to criminalize normal human behavior. She's calculating probabilities, assessing risks, and modifying her behavior to minimize exposure to accusations that could destroy her life. She's living like someone under constant surveillance, because she essentially is. The economic crimes carry penalties that ensure poverty becomes a permanent condition. If your wife damages valuable property through negligence, she must compensate the owner through labour that could extend for years. If she fails to meet productivity standards for household industries like weaving or brewing, her family becomes responsible for the lost income. It's a legal system where accidents become lifelong death sentences. The religious infractions open entirely new categories of potential punishment. Failing to maintain proper respect for household gods, missing mandatory religious ceremonies, or expressing doubts about divine justice can result in excommunication from temple activities. In a society where religious participation is essential for social acceptance, spiritual punishment becomes social death. The procedures for investigating alleged crimes against wives demonstrate the legal system's commitment to thorough injustice. Accusations require minimal evidence but extensive investigation, during which the accused remains under suspicion while her accuser faces no consequences for making false claims. It's like a criminal justice system, where filing charges is risk-free, but being charged is presumptively guilty. The punishment escalation protocols ensure that minor infractions can rapidly become major crimes through the legal equivalent of compound interest. A single act of disrespect, if repeated, becomes a pattern of defiance. A pattern of defiance becomes grounds for more serious charges. More serious charges carry more severe penalties, creating a system where small mistakes can snowball into life-destroying consequences. Most wives respond to this legal environment by developing behavioural strategies that prioritise survival over happiness, compliance over authenticity, and safety over self-expression. They live like diplomats in hostile countries, carefully managing every interaction to avoid providing ammunition for future accusations. The tragic irony is that the laws designed to preserve marriage actually poison it by making love impossible when every expression of displeasure could be interpreted as criminal defiance. Couples can't resolve conflicts honestly when honesty might be used as evidence in future legal proceedings. Trust becomes a luxury that married couples can't afford. Your wife's daily routine reads like a job description, written by someone who believes sleep is for the weak and happiness is a character flaw. From sunrise to sunset, every moment is scheduled with tasks that would challenge a modern productivity expert who's had too much coffee and not enough common sense. The day begins before dawn with water collection, a 20-minute hike to the communal well carrying clay jars that grow heavier with each step. Your wife joins a line of other women who've also discovered that hydration requires athletic endurance and social networking skills. The conversations during water collection serve as the ancient equivalent of office gossip, except the office never closes and the gossip determines your social survival. Grain grinding consumes the next 2 hours, transforming barley kernels into flour through a process that builds arm muscles and destroys optimism. The grinding stone weighs approximately 40 pounds and requires technique that combines physical strength with rhythmic precision. It's like CrossFit training designed by people who've never heard of CrossFit, but understand the importance of making simple tasks unnecessarily difficult. Bread baking happens at the communal oven, a clay structure that serves 30 families and operates on a first-come, first-served basis that encourages pre-dawn arrival and competitive baking. Your wife must time her dough preparation to coincide with oven availability while managing the social dynamics of women who view bread quality as a measure of personal worth. Food preparation for the midday meal requires gathering ingredients that may or may not exist depending on seasonal availability, family finances, and the mood of local merchants. Vegetables must be cleaned, sorted, and prepared using knives that are sharp enough to be dangerous but not sharp enough to be efficient. It's culinary arts practiced under conditions that would violate modern workplace safety regulations. Textile production occupies whatever time remains between food preparation and food preparation. Your wife operates a vertical loom that produces cloth through a process requiring patience, skill, and the ability to maintain consistent tension while managing thread that seems determined to tangle itself into abstract sculptures. The finished cloth provides family clothing and trade goods, assuming the quality meets standards set by people who've never attempted weaving. Household maintenance involves cleaning surfaces that accumulate dust faster than desert sandstorms can deposit it. Floors are swept with brooms that redistribute dirt more effectively than they remove it. Furniture is maintained through repairs that require tools borrowed from neighbours who question your competence based on the frequency of your requests. Childcare, when applicable, happens simultaneously with all other activities because ancient Sumer hasn't invented the concept of dedicated childcare time. Your wife must monitor small humans who explore their environment with the enthusiasm of scientists testing dangerous hypotheses while she maintains productivity standards that assume children will raise themselves through observation and osmosis. Laundry requires carrying clothes to the river, beating them against rocks with enough force to remove stains but not enough to destroy fabric, then carrying wet garments home for drying in a climate that alternates between dust storms and humidity that makes everything feel damp. It's like doing laundry at a campground designed by people who think camping should be more difficult. Evening meal preparation begins before the midday meal is finished, creating a continuous cycle of food-related activities that ensures your wife thinks about nutrition more than a modern dietitian, but enjoys eating less than someone on a restricted medical diet. The evening meal must be prepared, served, and cleaned up while managing family interactions that range from helpful to actively obstructive. Religious obligations are woven throughout the day like spiritual interruptions that require dropping everything to acknowledge deities who apparently need constant attention and reassurance. Prayer times, offering preparations, and ritual cleanings must be integrated into an already impossible schedule without reducing productivity in other areas. The workday ends after sunset with preparation for the next day's activities. Tools must be cleaned, ingredients prepared, and plans made for tomorrow's execution of the same tasks that consume today. It's like being trapped in a time loop designed by someone with obsessive-compulsive tendencies and a sadistic sense of humour. Sleep comes as a brief interruption in the schedule rather than genuine rest, because tomorrow's responsibilities begin planning themselves before today's are completed. Your wife falls asleep reviewing mental checklists of tasks that multiply faster than rabbits in a favourable ecosystem. The ancient Sumerian kitchen operates like a scientific laboratory, designed by people who understand chemistry, but have never heard of safety protocols. Every meal preparation becomes an experiment in transforming raw materials into edible products using equipment that would make modern chefs consider career changes. Your cooking area consists of a fire pit surrounded by stones that retain heat about as effectively as ice cubes retain temperature. The fire must be maintained at precise levels. Too low, and food remains raw. Too high, and everything burns while consuming fuel your family can't afford to waste. It's like operating a temperamental oven that requires constant attention and provides inconsistent results. The grinding stone for preparing flour doubles as a workout device that builds upper body strength through repetitive motions that would qualify as occupational therapy if occupational therapy were designed to cause joint pain. 2 hours of daily grinding produces enough flour for bread that tastes like edible cardboard, but provides the carbohydrates necessary for survival. Food storage presents challenges that would puzzle modern food scientists. Without refrigeration, preservation relies on salting, drying, and fermentation techniques that turn ingredients into science experiments with unpredictable outcomes. Your food storage area resembles a chemistry lab where some experiments succeed and others produce results that clear rooms faster than fire alarms. Water management requires daily decisions about allocation for cooking, cleaning, and drinking, from supplies that must be carried from distant sources in containers that leak enough to keep you constantly thirsty. Every drop counts, literally, because running out of water means additional trips to the well-carrying jars that seem to grow heavier with each journey. The seasonal menu depends entirely on what's currently growing or recently killed in your immediate vicinity. Dietary variety exists only during brief harvest seasons when multiple crops mature simultaneously. Most of the year features endless variations of barley, prepared with whatever vegetables survived the latest environmental challenges. Cooking utensils consist of clay pots that crack under temperature stress, wooden spoons that absorb flavours from previous meals, and knives that require frequent sharpening but become less effective with each maintenance session. It's like cooking with tools designed by people who understand their purpose, but not their optimization. Meal planning requires strategic thinking that would challenge military logistics experts. You must coordinate ingredient availability, fuel consumption, cooking time, and family schedules, while managing a kitchen that operates under conditions that make camping look luxurious. Every meal becomes a project with multiple failure points and limited backup options. The health implications of ancient cooking methods include smoke inhalation from poorly ventilated fires, repetitive stress injuries from grinding and food preparation, and nutritional deficiencies from limited ingredient variety. Your wife's kitchen work resembles an occupational hazard assessment, where every task carries risks that modern safety experts would consider unacceptable. Food safety standards rely on visual inspections, smell tests, and prayers to various deities who apparently oversee food quality control. Spoiled ingredients must be identified through techniques that would make modern food inspectors consider early retirement. The margin for error is small, and the consequences of mistakes range from indigestion to food poisoning that could prove fatal. Cleanup procedures require managing water supplies that must serve multiple purposes, while removing grease and food residue using materials that don't include soap as we understand it. Cleaning agents consist of sand, ash, and various plant materials that provide abrasive action, but limited antiseptic properties. The social aspects of food preparation include managing family expectations for meal quality, while working with ingredients and equipment that make consistency nearly impossible. Your cooking is judged by people who've never attempted the process themselves, but maintain strong opinions about optimal outcomes. Kitchen accidents include burns from uncontrolled fires, cuts from crude knives, and injuries from heavy equipment that lack safety features. First aid consists of herbal remedies and prayer, creating a work environment where prevention is crucial because treatment options are limited. The psychological toll of daily food preparation includes the constant pressure to transform minimal ingredients into satisfying meals, while managing time constraints that make success feel miraculous rather than expected. Your wife operates a kitchen that combines the stress of professional cooking with the resources of subsistence farming. Personal cleanliness in ancient Sumer exists as a theoretical concept implemented through methods that would make modern germaphobes consider living in sterile bubbles. Your wife's daily hygiene routine resembles a complex chemical experiment conducted without proper laboratory equipment or safety protocols. Bathing happens approximately once per week using water that must be heated over fires that consume precious fuel while producing smoke that defeats the purpose of getting clean. The bathing process involves standing in clay basins that hold barely enough water to dampen your body, while scrubbing with materials that provide exfoliation services whether you want them or not. Soap consists of animal fat mixed with ash from burned plants, creating a substance that removes dirt through chemical action that also removes skin layers you probably wanted to keep. The soap production process requires rendering personal cleanliness in ancient Sumer exists as a theoretical concept, implemented through methods that would make modern germaphobes consider living in sterile bubbles. Your wife's daily hygiene routine resembles a complex chemical experiment conducted without proper laboratory equipment or safety protocols. Bathing happens approximately once per week using water that must be heated over fires that consume precious fuel while producing smoke that defeats the purpose of getting clean. The bathing process involves standing in clay basins that hold barely enough water to dampen your body while scrubbing with materials that provide exfoliation services whether you want them or not. Soap consists of animal fat mixed with ash from burned plants, creating a substance that removes dirt through chemical action that also removes skin layers you probably wanted to keep. The soap production process requires rendering fat that smells like a barbecue, hosted by people who've never heard of proper ventilation. Your wife spends hours stirring this mixture over open flames, creating aromatic clouds that announce bath day to the entire neighbourhood. Hair washing involves the same harsh soap applied to scalp and strands that weren't designed to withstand industrial-strength cleaning products. The result is hair that's technically clean, but feels like rope made from disappointed expectations. Conditioning treatments consist of oil applied sparingly because oil costs more than most people's monthly food budget. Teeth cleaning utilises twigs chewed into frayed ends, creating primitive toothbrushes that work about as effectively as trying to clean windows with pine needles. Dental paste is made from ground salt and herbs that taste like someone mixed sand with regret. The cleaning process removes food particles while introducing new flavours that make you question your life choices. Laundry represents a full-contact sport played against stubborn stains, using weapons that would make modern fabric softener weep. Clothes are beaten against rocks with enough force to tenderize meat, while hoping the fabric survives the treatment. The soap used for laundry is even harsher than body soap, creating cleaning solutions that could probably strip paint if paint existed. Deodorant consists of prayers to various gods and strategic positioning to take advantage of favourable wind patterns. Personal scent management relies on masking rather than elimination, using perfumes made from flowers and herbs that cost more than most families earn in a month. The wealthy smell like expensive gardens, while everyone else smells like honest work mixed with resignation. Hair removal for women involves techniques that would make modern beauticians consider career changes. Tweezers made from metal or wood pluck individual hairs through processes that build character while reducing follicle population. Larger areas require methods involving heated wax that adheres to everything except the hairs you're trying to remove. Nail care happens through cutting with knives that also serve multiple household purposes, creating manicures that prioritize functionality over aesthetics. Fingernails are trimmed to lengths that support daily work while avoiding the luxury of decorative length that would interfere with grain grinding and textile production. Menstrual hygiene relies on cloth rags that must be washed and reused through cycles that make modern convenience products seem like miracles of engineering. The washing process happens in communal areas where privacy doesn't exist, and discretion becomes an art form practiced by women who've mastered the subtle science of managing biological realities without discussing them. Wound care and minor medical treatment happen through techniques that combine herbal knowledge with optimistic thinking. Cuts are cleaned with water that may or may not be cleaner than the original wound, then treated with plant-based remedies that sometimes work and sometimes add interesting new complications to the healing process. The seasonal aspects of hygiene create additional challenges as weather conditions affect both access to water and the practicality of removing clothing for cleaning purposes. Winter bathing becomes an exercise in speed and determination, while summer cleaning must balance cleanliness with the reality that clean skin immediately attracts dust and insects. Public hygiene standards vary dramatically based on social status and available resources. The wealthy maintain appearances through servants and expensive cleaning products, while the poor develop strategies that prioritize health over presentation. Everyone exists somewhere on a spectrum between clean enough to function and clean enough to impress, with most people settling for functional most of the time. Ancient Sumerian society operates like a vertical prison, where your cell assignment depends entirely on the circumstances of your birth, and parole doesn't exist. The social hierarchy is carved into law, custom, and daily reality, with the permanence of cuneiform script pressed into wet clay. You wake up every morning knowing exactly where you stand in this cosmic ranking system, and that position was determined before you took your first breath. Your father's profession, your family's wealth, and your bloodline create an invisible tattoo that everyone can read instantly. It's like being born with a barcode that scans your worth at every social interaction. The king sits at the top of this pyramid, enjoying privileges that include never having to explain his decisions to people who disagree with them. His word becomes law through divine mandate, meaning questioning royal policy isn't just treason, it's arguing with the gods themselves. The royal family lives in palaces that make modern mansions look like storage sheds, surrounded by luxury that most people can't even imagine. Below the royalty, priests occupy the second tier, claiming direct communication with deities who apparently have strong opinions about taxation and city planning. Temple priests control vast resources through religious authority that combines spiritual guidance with economic manipulation. They live comfortably while explaining to others why poverty builds character and suffering brings divine favour. Military commanders and high officials form the third level, enjoying status that comes with the authority to make life or death decisions about people they've never met. Their wealth derives from land grants and tribute payments, creating fortunes built on the organised violence that maintains social order. They dine on delicacies while discussing battle strategies that will determine which families lose sons this season. Wealthy merchants occupy an awkward position in this hierarchy, technically below nobles, but practically above them in purchasing power. They can't inherit titles or marry into royalty, but they can buy anything else, including the loyalty of people who outrank them officially. It's like being excluded from the VIP section while owning the entire venue. Skilled craftsmen and professional scribes form the middle tier, possessing specialised knowledge that creates modest prosperity and social respect. These artisans can afford adequate housing and regular meals, while maintaining the illusion that hard work leads to advancement. They're wealthy enough to look down on farmers while remaining poor enough to envy merchants. Farmers and agricultural workers constitute the vast majority of the population, producing the food that supports everyone above them, while struggling to feed their own families. They pay taxes to the king, tribute to the temples, and rent to landowners, leaving barely enough to survive on. Their children will become farmers unless war, disease, or exceptional circumstances intervene. At the bottom of the social ladder, slaves provide labour for projects that free citizens consider beneath their dignity. Slavery results from war, debt, or birth to enslaved parents, creating a permanent underclass with no legal rights and no hope of advancement. They work in conditions that would violate modern safety regulations while receiving compensation that barely sustains life. Social mobility exists in theory, but requires circumstances so extraordinary that they function more like miracles than opportunities. A farmer's son might become a scribe through exceptional intelligence, but he'll never become a priest or noble. A craftsman might accumulate enough wealth to live comfortably, but he can't purchase genuine social status. Marriage reinforces these class distinctions through arrangements that maintain bloodline purity and economic advantages. Nobles marry nobles, merchants marry merchants, and farmers marry farmers, with rare exceptions that become gossip for generations. Cross-class marriages are discouraged through social pressure that makes modern peer pressure look gentle. The legal system provides different justice based on social rank, with punishments and compensation scaled according to the victim's and perpetrator's status. Killing a nobleman carries severe penalties, while killing a slave requires modest compensation to the owner. Justice isn't blind, it's equipped with detailed vision that can distinguish between social classes at great distances. Religious ceremonies reinforce these distinctions through seating arrangements, participation roles, and offering requirements that ensure everyone knows their place even while worshipping the same gods. The wealthy sit closer to the altar, contribute larger sacrifices, and receive preferential treatment from deities, who apparently appreciate quality donations. Daily interactions become constant reminders of social position, through greeting protocols, speech patterns, and behavioural expectations that vary based on relative rank. You bow deeper to superiors, speak more formally to those above your station, and maintain careful awareness of who deserves what level of respect in every social situation. Information in ancient Sumer travels faster than bad news at a family reunion, but with considerably more serious consequences. The gossip network operates like a primitive internet, where every comment becomes permanent, searchable, and potentially life-destroying for anyone involved. Your reputation exists as community property, discussed and evaluated by neighbours who've appointed themselves as unofficial character assessors. Every action, decision, and mistake becomes subject matter for conversations that happen in markets, at wells, and during religious ceremonies. Privacy is a concept that won't be invented for several millennia. Women gathering at the communal well transform water collection into intensive intelligence operations. They exchange information with the efficiency of professional spy networks, cataloguing who's struggling financially, whose marriage is failing, and which families are experiencing internal conflicts. The well becomes mission control for neighbourhood surveillance. Market transactions provide opportunities for information exchange that rival modern social media platforms. Merchants collect gossip along with payments, creating networks that spread news across the entire region. A scandal in one district becomes entertainment in neighbouring areas within days, transmitted through commercial channels that prioritise juicy details over accuracy. Religious ceremonies serve dual purposes as spiritual gatherings and community information exchanges. Worshippers arrive early to share updates about local events, creating pre-service programming that's often more engaging than the actual religious content. Temple attendance becomes partly about salvation and partly about staying current with neighbourhood developments. The consequences of negative gossip include social isolation, economic boycotts, and exclusion from religious and community activities. Families with damaged reputations find themselves excluded from marriage arrangements, business partnerships, and social events. Reputation damage spreads through multiple generations, affecting children and grandchildren who inherit social stigma along with family property. Positive gossip can elevate families to higher social status through community recognition of virtue, success, or exceptional behaviour. Stories of generosity, wisdom, or achievement circulate with the same speed as scandal, creating opportunities for reputation enhancement that savvy families cultivate carefully. Marriage negotiations rely heavily on gossip networks that provide background checks on potential partners and their families. Parents investigate bloodlines, financial stability, and behavioural history through informal channels that make modern credit reports look superficial. A single negative story can destroy marriage prospects permanently. Business relationships depend on reputation management that requires constant attention to community perception. Merchants with damaged reputations lose customers, craftsmen lose commissions, and farmers lose favourable trading arrangements. Economic success becomes tied to social standing in ways that make professional networking essential for survival. The elderly occupy special positions in gossip networks as repositories of historical information and respected sources of character assessment. Their opinions carry extra weight because they've observed multiple generations and can provide context that younger community members lack. Elderly disapproval can devastate social standing instantly. Children learn early to manage their behaviour based on potential gossip consequences, developing awareness that every action could become public knowledge. They practice discretion and social awareness as survival skills, understanding that their family's reputation depends partly on their ability to avoid creating embarrassing stories. Wealthy families employ strategies to manage gossip that include generous charitable contributions, careful public behaviour, and strategic alliance, building with influential community members. They understand that money can't buy silence, but it can influence the tone of conversations about their activities. Legal disputes often involve gossip elements where community opinion influences official decisions. Judges consider reputation evidence along with factual testimony, making prior social standing relevant to current legal proceedings. Justice becomes partly about truth, and partly about community perception of character. The travelling merchant class serves as inter-regional gossip carriers, spreading news between distant communities and creating networks that connect far-flung areas. They trade information along with goods, making long-distance reputation management necessary for anyone involved in regional commerce. Seasonal festivals provide intensive gossip exchange opportunities where multiple communities gather for celebration and information sharing. These events become like conventions for the gossip industry, allowing for comprehensive updates on regional news and reputation status among wide audiences. Living in ancient Sumer means existing in a fishbowl where the fish are judgmental and have excellent memories. Personal privacy is about as achievable as air conditioning in the desert. Technically possible if you're wealthy enough, but practically impossible for everyone else. Your house shares walls with neighbours who can hear your conversations, arguments, and domestic activities through construction materials that prioritise affordability over soundproofing. Clay brick and reed matting create architectural transparency that makes your private life public entertainment for anyone within earshot. Family disputes become neighbourhood theatre, performed for audiences who didn't buy tickets but show up anyway. Marital arguments, parenting conflicts, and financial stress provide content for community discussions that analyse your domestic management skills with the thoroughness of professional critics. Children serve as involuntary informants who repeat family conversations in public settings without understanding the implications. They casually mention household problems during play, creating intelligence leaks that reveal family secrets to parents who then share information throughout their social networks. Economic problems become visible through changes in lifestyle that observant neighbours document with accounting precision. Reduced food purchases, postponed home repairs, and altered clothing standards signal financial distress to community members who track these indicators like ancient credit rating agencies. Health issues transform into public knowledge through visible symptoms, change behaviour patterns, and the necessity of seeking treatment from healers who serve multiple families. Medical privacy doesn't exist when illness requires community resources and neighbour assistance for basic survival needs. Religious obligations create opportunities for public evaluation of spiritual commitment and moral character. Missing ceremonies, reducing offerings, or showing insufficient enthusiasm during worship becomes evidence of religious decline that affects social standing and community acceptance. Work performance generates public assessment through visible results that neighbours observe and evaluate. Crop yields, craft quality, and professional success become subject to community analysis that influences reputation and future opportunities for advancement or partnership. Marriage relationships receive constant scrutiny from community members who consider themselves qualified to assess compatibility, happiness, and domestic harmony. Public interactions between spouses become performance art evaluated by audiences who maintain detailed opinions about relationship quality. Child-rearing practices face continuous evaluation from neighbours who consider themselves expert advisors on parenting techniques. Child behaviour, educational progress, and family discipline methods become topics for community discussion that can affect family reputation for generations. Social interactions require careful management of public persona that balances authenticity with community expectations. Every conversation, gesture, and expression becomes potential evidence of character that influences how others perceive your family's social value and trustworthiness. Secrets become valuable currency in social economies, where information provides leverage in negotiations, relationships, and community positioning. Knowing embarrassing details about others creates social capital that can be traded for favours, protection, or advancement opportunities. The wealthy achieve limited privacy through larger homes, private servants, and social distance from common areas where gossip networks operate most intensively. Money can't eliminate community surveillance, but it can reduce exposure to the most invasive forms of social observation. Legal protection for privacy doesn't exist in legal codes that prioritise community welfare over individual rights. Personal information becomes public property when it affects community interests, making individual privacy secondary to collective social management needs. Seasonal gatherings intensify privacy invasion through increased social contact that provides comprehensive updates on family situations. Festivals, religious ceremonies, and market days become opportunities for detailed observation and information exchange that updates community knowledge about everyone's personal business. The travelling merchant and diplomatic classes develop strategies for managing privacy across multiple communities, understanding that reputation management requires coordination between different social networks. They practice information control techniques that minimise damaging gossip while maintaining necessary business relationships. The religious system in ancient Sumer operated through complex relationships between believers and deities. Regular offerings and ceremonies were central to community life, reflecting the era's understanding of divine favour and spiritual obligations. You wake up each morning owing various deities for services including but not limited to continued existence, adequate weather, protection from disease, fertility for crops and family, and general divine approval for your daily activities. The gods maintain detailed accounts of offerings received and favours owed, apparently using accounting systems more sophisticated than most modern businesses. Inanna, goddess of love and fertility, requires regular offerings of dates, barley, oil and livestock to maintain her interest in your reproductive success. Her mood swings affect everything from crop yields to marriage compatibility, making her arguably more powerful than government officials in determining quality of life. She's like a cosmic relationship counsellor with anger management issues. Enlil, god of air and storms, controls weather patterns that determine agricultural success, and therefore survival itself. His offerings demand the finest livestock your family can afford, creating religious expenses that compete directly with food budgets. Disappointing Enlil could result in droughts, floods, or storms that destroy entire communities, making his worship a practical insurance policy against meteorological disaster. Marduk oversees justice and order, requiring tribute that demonstrates respect for divine law and social hierarchy. His priests interpret legal codes that conveniently align with temple interests, creating religious jurisprudence that benefits institutional wealth while claiming divine mandate. Justice becomes available on a sliding scale based on offering quality. The temple system employs hundreds of priests, priestesses and support staff who live comfortably while explaining to others why poverty demonstrates spiritual discipline. Temple complexes rival royal palaces in luxury, housing religious administrators who manage divine finances with the efficiency of corporate executives blessed by higher powers. Daily religious obligations include morning prayers, meal offerings, evening rituals, and constant awareness of divine surveillance that monitors every thought and action. The gods apparently require regular attention and reassurance, like cosmic children with self-esteem issues and unlimited authority over mortal welfare. Seasonal festivals demand community-wide participation in celebrations that consume resources equivalent to months of normal household budgets. These events honour various deities through elaborate ceremonies that require new clothing, special foods, expensive decorations and mandatory attendance that make skipping impossible without social consequences. Personal shrine maintenance requires regular cleaning, fresh offerings, incense burning, and prayer sessions that consume time needed for productive work. Your household shrine becomes a miniature temple requiring daily attention, while generating no income to offset the resources invested in its maintenance. Religious law interprets divine will through priestly authorities who possess convenient direct communication with gods, who consistently support institutional policies. Divine commands arrive regularly through dreams, omens and revelations that align remarkably well with temple financial needs and political preferences. The afterlife reward system promises spiritual benefits for faithful worship, while threatening eternal punishment for religious negligence. However, the criteria for salvation remain deliberately vague, creating ongoing anxiety that drives increased religious participation and offering frequency throughout believers' lifetimes. Temple land ownership exempts religious institutions from taxation while generating income through agricultural production and rental fees. The gods apparently require earthly real estate portfolios managed by priests, who coincidentally live in luxury while preaching about spiritual detachment from material wealth. Religious education teaches children to prioritize divine obligations over personal desires, family needs, or rational thinking. Temple schools produce literate adults who can read religious texts while remaining ignorant of economic principles that might help them recognize institutional exploitation disguised as spiritual guidance. Miracle claims provide evidence of divine power that convenient occur when temple authorities need to demonstrate supernatural effectiveness. Healing ceremonies, weather predictions, and prophetic revelations happen with timing that suggests divine intervention or sophisticated psychological manipulation, depending on your perspective. The oracle system provides divine guidance through priests who interpret ambiguous messages, in ways that support predetermined conclusions. Consultation fees ensure that divine wisdom remains accessible primarily to those who can afford premium spiritual services, creating two-tier access to supernatural guidance. Religious institutions in ancient Sumer function as divinely authorized tax collection agencies that combine spiritual guidance with economic extraction through methods that would make modern revenue services study their techniques. The temple system operates on the principle that gods need money, and believers need salvation badly enough to pay whatever the market will bear. Your annual religious obligations include tithing requirements that demand 10% of all income, plus seasonal offerings, emergency contributions for temple maintenance, special assessments for religious festivals, and voluntary donations that aren't actually voluntary if you value your social standing and spiritual security. Temple granaries collect agricultural tithes through measurement systems that somehow always seem to favour the institution over the individual contributor. Grain quality assessment involves religious officials who possess mysterious expertise in determining which portion of your harvest meets divine standards and which requires upgrade fees to achieve acceptable spiritual value. Livestock contributions require animals that meet rigid quality standards enforced by priests who've apparently received detailed divine specifications about acceptable sacrificial offerings. Sick, injured or elderly animals face rejection, forcing families to surrender their best livestock while keeping inferior specimens for personal use. Special religious taxes emerge whenever temple authorities identify divine displeasure that requires community-wide financial response. Natural disasters, poor harvests, and social problems trigger additional assessments that transfer responsibility for supernatural intervention from gods to believers' wallets. Wedding ceremonies require temple fees that include facility rental, priestly services, blessing ceremonies, and administrative costs for religious documentation. Marriage becomes financially viable only after satisfying institutional requirements that treat divine approval as a premium service with corresponding price structure. Funeral rites demand payment for spiritual services that ensure proper afterlife transition for deceased family members. Families must choose between adequate burial ceremonies and financial survival, creating grief experiences that combine mourning with economic stress about eternal consequences of insufficient religious investment. Coming of age, rituals for children require educational fees, ceremonial expenses, and offering requirements that mark transition to adult religious responsibilities. These ceremonies establish lifelong patterns of institutional financial obligation while celebrating spiritual maturity through economic commitment demonstration. Healing services combine medical treatment with religious ceremonies that require payment for both physical and spiritual intervention. Temple healers provide healthcare that addresses supernatural causes of illness while charging fees that reflect the premium value of divinely guided medical practice. Legal dispute resolution through religious courts involves filing fees, witness costs, ceremonial expenses, and offering requirements that ensure divine guidance for judicial decisions. Justice becomes available through institutional channels that prioritize spiritual correctness over legal accuracy, with pricing that reflects supernatural court authority. Pilgrimage obligations require travel expenses, accommodation costs, offering requirements, and ceremonial fees for visiting distant temples that house particularly powerful deities. Religious tourism generates revenue streams that benefit institutional networks while creating spiritual experiences that demonstrate faith through financial sacrifice. Temple construction projects demand community contributions through special assessments that build increasingly elaborate religious facilities. Divine architectural requirements apparently favour expensive materials and sophisticated construction techniques that require professional labour and imported materials funded through believer donations. Priestly education systems require tuition payments for children who show potential for religious careers. Temple schools provide literacy training and spiritual instruction while creating future generations of religious administrators who understand institutional financial management as essential spiritual practice. Oracle consultation services offer divine guidance through fee-based sessions that provide supernatural insight into personal problems. Professional prophets interpret divine messages through complex ceremonies that require advance payment and offering contributions to ensure accurate spiritual communication. religious festival participation involves costume requirements, food contributions, decoration expenses, and ceremonial fees that transform community celebrations into elaborate fundraising events. Seasonal religious observance becomes financially demanding demonstration of spiritual commitment that affects annual household budgets significantly. The religious hierarchy in ancient Sumer creates a system where spiritual leaders enjoy material prosperity that surpasses royal luxury while preaching about the virtues of poverty and divine reward in the afterlife. Temple administrators have perfected the art of living like monarchs while maintaining reputations as humble servants of the gods. High priests occupy palace-like residences within temple complexes that feature private gardens, elaborate dining halls, luxurious sleeping quarters, and entertainment areas that rival royal accommodations. These spiritual leaders claim divine mandate for luxury while explaining to followers why material deprivation demonstrates proper religious devotion. Temple kitchens prepare elaborate meals using ingredients that represent the finest agricultural products from temple-owned lands and religious offerings contributed by faithful believers. Priestly dining includes imported delicacies, premium meats, refined grains, and exotic spices that most worshippers will never taste while attending religious ceremonies on empty stomachs. Clothing for religious officials utilizes expensive fabrics, intricate embroidery, precious metal accessories, and jewellery that demonstrates divine favour through material abundance. Priests wear garments that cost more than most families earn in multiple years, while delivering sermons about spiritual values that transcend earthly possessions. Transportation services for high-ranking religious officials include elaborate sedan chairs, decorated carriages, and ceremonial processions that require teams of servants to maintain appropriate dignity for divine representatives. Temple authorities travel in comfort that exceeds royal standards while visiting communities to collect offerings from believers who walk everywhere. Personal service staffs for senior priests include cooks, cleaners, gardeners, scribes, musicians, and bodyguards who ensure comfortable lifestyles for religious leaders who supposedly renounced worldly concerns. These servants live in temple quarters while providing luxury services that insulate spiritual authorities from daily inconveniences experienced by ordinary believers. Temple treasury management involves sophisticated accounting systems that track income from multiple sources, while maintaining expense accounts that fund priestly lifestyles through religious revenues. Financial records demonstrate institutional wealth accumulation that rivals royal treasuries while claiming tax-exempt status based on spiritual mission. Educational privileges provide temple schools for priestly children that offer superior instruction, cultural enrichment, and professional preparation unavailable to common families. Religious administrators ensure their offspring receive advantages that perpetuate elite status across generations while limiting educational access for potential competitors. Legal immunity protects religious officials from prosecution for crimes that would result in severe punishment for ordinary citizens. Priests enjoy judicial protection that places them above civil law, while claiming divine authority that supersedes human justice systems designed to control common behaviour. Medical care for temple personnel includes access to the finest healers, imported medicines, specialised treatments, and recovery facilities that provide healthcare quality unavailable to regular believers. Religious leaders receive medical attention that ensures longevity and comfort, while preaching acceptance of suffering as spiritual purification. Entertainment options for priestly class include private performances by professional musicians, dancers, and storytellers who provide cultural enrichment exclusively for religious elite. Temple authorities enjoy artistic experiences while ordinary believers participate only in community religious ceremonies designed for mass spiritual instruction rather than personal enjoyment. Investment opportunities allow religious institutions to participate in commercial ventures, land development, trade expeditions, and financial speculation that generate wealth through business activities conducted under religious protection. Temple authorities operate sophisticated economic enterprises while maintaining spiritual credibility through ceremonial duties. Marriage arrangements for priestly families involve alliances with wealthy merchant families, noble houses, and other religious dynasties that consolidate power and resources across institutional boundaries. Religious leaders arrange advantageous unions while counselling ordinary believers about accepting divine will in all matrimonial matters. Retirement benefits for senior religious officials include lifetime support, comfortable housing, continued access to temple resources, and honoured status that provides security unavailable to believers who contribute throughout their lives without accumulating comparable assets for old age support. Inheritance systems ensure that temple positions, accumulated wealth, and institutional influence pass to qualified family members who maintain religious dynasties across multiple generations. Spiritual leadership becomes hereditary privilege disguised as divine calling, creating permanent religious aristocracy that benefits from believer contributions while claiming supernatural mandate. Civilization in ancient Sumer arrives with a price tag that includes surrendering most human freedoms in exchange for organized misery that's supposedly better than chaotic happiness. Progress means trading individual autonomy for collective security that protects you from everything except the protection system itself. You wake up in humanity's first experiment with urban living, where thousands of people crowd together in spaces that make modern apartments look spacious. City life concentrates population density to levels that turn privacy into luxury, available only to those wealthy enough to purchase isolation from neighbours who know your business better than you do. Agriculture replaces hunting and gathering with farming systems that require year-round labour for survival that was previously achieved through seasonal effort. Civilization means working harder for food security while becoming dependent on weather patterns, soil, conditions and agricultural techniques that can fail catastrophically. Writing systems create permanent records that transform temporary mistakes into lifelong consequences, documented in clay tablets that preserve embarrassing details for future generations. Literacy becomes essential for legal protection, while creating opportunities for institutional manipulation through complex contracts that favour educated elites over illiterate common people. Legal codes establish justice systems that replace personal vendetta with organised punishment administered by authorities who may or may not understand the situations they're judging. Formal law provides consistency at the cost of flexibility, creating bureaucratic solutions to human problems that require nuanced understanding. Social hierarchies organise human relationships through rigid class structures that determine life possibilities based on birth circumstances rather than individual capability or effort. Civilization creates stability through inequality that benefits some while limiting others to predetermined roles, regardless of personal talents or ambitions. Religious institutions centralize spiritual authority through organized systems that replace personal divine connection with institutional mediation. Formal religion provides community spiritual guidance, while requiring financial support for elaborate temple complexes that benefit priestly classes more than ordinary believers. Economic specialization increases efficiency, while creating interdependence that makes individual self-sufficiency impossible. Craftsmen produce superior goods through focused expertise, but become vulnerable to economic disruption when specialized skills become unnecessary or replaceable through technological advancement. Military organization provides security through professional warriors who protect communities while requiring tax support and potential conscription that involves ordinary citizens in conflicts they didn't choose. Defense systems create safety at the cost of resources and personal freedom sacrificed for collective security needs. Administrative systems manage complex societies through bureaucratic structures that require numerous officials, extensive record-keeping, and complicated procedures for simple transactions. Government efficiency comes with regulatory overhead that consumes resources while creating opportunities for corruption and administrative incompetence. Trade networks expand access to goods and materials while creating economic vulnerability to distant events beyond local control. Commercial exchange provides variety and luxury while making communities dependent on supply chains that can be disrupted by war, weather, or political instability. Technological advancement improves living standards through innovations that require resource investment, maintenance costs, and specialized knowledge for operation. Progress creates benefits that demand ongoing commitment to systems that become more complex and expensive over time. Urban planning organizes space efficiently, while creating environmental problems including waste management challenges, water contamination, and air quality issues that affect public health. Cities concentrate human activity while generating collective problems that require community solutions and resource allocation. Cultural development produces art, literature, and intellectual achievement while requiring leisure time and educational investment available primarily to privileged classes. Civilization creates cultural richness that enhances human experience for those wealthy enough to participate in activities beyond basic survival needs. Professional healthcare provides medical expertise through trained healers, while creating dependence on specialists whose services cost more than traditional family-based care. Medical advancement improves treatment outcomes while making healthcare a commodity available based on ability to pay rather than medical need. 5,000 years later, you realize that ancient Sumer invented the template for modern civilization, a system where progress creates new problems faster than it solves old ones, trapping humanity in an endless cycle of complexity that requires increasingly sophisticated solutions to manage the complications created by previous solutions. The agricultural revolution that seemed like humanity's greatest achievement becomes the foundation for population growth that strains resources, environmental degradation that threatens sustainability, and social inequality that divides communities into competing classes. Food security creates new insecurities that require additional technological and organizational responses. Urban planning that concentrates people efficiently generates waste management problems, resource distribution challenges, and social tensions that require administrative solutions, law enforcement, and infrastructure investment. Every improvement in city organization creates secondary problems that demand additional expertise and resource allocation to maintain civic functionality. Economic specialization that increases productivity creates interdependence that makes communities vulnerable to supply chain disruption, market manipulation, and external economic pressure. Efficiency gains come with systemic risks that require complex financial institutions, trade regulations, and economic management systems to maintain stability. Legal systems that provide justice create bureaucratic complexity that requires professional legal expertise, administrative oversight, and enforcement mechanisms that consume significant community resources. Justice becomes available through institutional channels that may be less accessible than informal dispute resolution methods they replace. Religious institutions that organize spiritual life create hierarchical structures that concentrate power among priestly classes while imposing financial obligations on believers. Organized religion provides community spiritual guidance, while developing institutional interests that may conflict with individual spiritual needs or community welfare. Technological advancement that improves living standards requires ongoing innovation, resource investment, and infrastructure maintenance that creates permanent economic obligations. Progress becomes self-perpetuating necessity that demands continuous development to maintain advantages gained through previous innovations. Military organization that provides security creates professional warrior classes that require ongoing support while potentially developing political ambitions that threaten civilian authority. Defense systems become permanent institutional features that influence political decisions and resource allocation beyond immediate security needs. Social hierarchies that organize human relationships create inequality that generates social tension, requiring management through legal systems, religious justification, and cultural indoctrination. Stable society depends on maintaining class distinctions that create benefits for some while limiting opportunities for others. Educational systems that preserve knowledge create literate elites who possess information advantages over common people, while developing institutional cultures that may prioritize academic achievement over practical wisdom. Learning becomes specialized activity rather than integrated life experience. Trade networks that provide access to diverse goods create economic relationships that can be exploited by powerful interests while making local communities dependent on external markets beyond their control. Commercial expansion generates wealth while creating vulnerabilities to distant economic and political events. Administrative systems that manage complex societies require extensive bureaucracies that develop institutional momentum and self-interest that may conflict with public welfare. Government efficiency creates regulatory structures that can be manipulated by those with expertise to navigate complex systems. Healthcare systems that provide medical expertise create dependence on specialized knowledge, while potentially reducing individual understanding of health maintenance and treatment. Professional medicine improves outcomes while making healthcare a commodity subject to economic rather than medical priorities. Cultural development that produces artistic and intellectual achievement requires leisure-class support while creating cultural hierarchies that distinguish refined from common tastes. Civilization develops high culture that may become disconnected from daily life experiences of most community members. Environmental management that supports large populations creates ecological changes that require ongoing technological and organizational responses to maintain sustainability. Human civilization becomes geological force that must manage its own environmental impact to ensure continued viability. As you stand in ancient Sumer watching the sun set over humanity's first cities, you realize you're witnessing the birth of a pattern that will repeat itself across millennia. Every solution creates new problems, every advancement demands greater complexity, and every generation believes they're solving issues their ancestors couldn't comprehend. The clay tablets recording marriage contracts, property transfers, and legal disputes around you contain the same human struggles that will echo through every civilization that follows. The desperate husband hiding his moonlight work to feed his family shares DNA not just with his descendants, but with every person who will ever balance dignity against survival. Your wife's quiet strength as she navigates impossible choices mirrors the resilience of countless women throughout history who will transform limitation into opportunity through sheer determination. Her ability to find beauty in making umbrellas by candlelight reveals the human capacity to create meaning from the materials available, regardless of circumstances. The merchant who tried to bribe you represents a type that will appear in every society, those who believe everything has a price, and that prosperity justifies any compromise. His corruption isn't uniquely Sumerian, it's a human constant that adapts to new systems while maintaining the same fundamental disregard for integrity. These social hierarchies that trap you in predetermined roles will evolve but never disappear. Future civilizations will replace kings with presidents, priests with professors, and merchants with entrepreneurs. But the essential structure remains. Some people benefit from systems while others serve them, and most exist somewhere between privilege and powerlessness. The religious institutions demanding tributes while promising salvation will transform into countless variations across cultures and centuries. The template of spiritual authority combined with material accumulation proves remarkably adaptable, appearing in every society that develops organized belief systems. Looking at your children sleeping peacefully in their shared futon, you see the eternal human hope that the next generation will face better circumstances. Parents in every era will make the same sacrifices, harbour the same dreams, and pass down the same mixture of wisdom and limitation that defines human inheritance. The technology surrounding you, bronze tools, irrigation systems, wheeled carts, represents humanity's perpetual attempt to solve problems through innovation. Future generations will develop increasingly sophisticated solutions, while discovering that technological advancement often creates as many complications as it resolves. Your struggle to maintain honour while meeting practical needs reflects a dilemma that transcends historical periods. Every person in every era must balance ideals against reality, principles against survival, individual desire against collective responsibility. The specific circumstances change, but the fundamental challenge remains constant. The city around you buzzes with the energy of human beings creating civilization through countless small decisions, compromises, and adaptations. This same creative chaos will drive every society that follows, as people improvise solutions to immediate problems while inadvertently designing the future through accumulated choices. As night settles over ancient Sumer, you understand that you're not just experiencing history, you're creating it. Every choice you make, every compromise you accept, every principle you maintain or abandon contributes to patterns that will shape human experience for millennia. The stars above shine down on humanity's ongoing experiment with organized living. Future generations will look back at their own ancestors with the same mixture of respect and bewilderment that you feel contemplating your own heritage. Each generation believes they understand progress while participating in cycles they can't fully perceive. Tomorrow you'll rise again to face the same challenges that define human existence across all eras. How to provide for family, how to maintain dignity under pressure, how to balance competing demands, and how to find meaning in circumstances you didn't choose. These challenges don't disappear with civilization, they simply take new forms. Rest well, ancient dreamer. Your struggles matter not because they're unique, but because they're universal. Every person who will ever live will face versions of your choices, inherit consequences of your decisions, and wonder how to navigate the gap between human ideals and human reality. The wisdom you've gained through hardship becomes humanity's inheritance, the understanding that survival requires both flexibility and principle, that progress demands both individual sacrifice and collective cooperation, and that meaning emerges not from perfect circumstances, but from how we respond to imperfect ones. Sleep now in your humble home, surrounded by family having done what you could with what you had. That perhaps is the most anyone can achieve in any era, and it's enough.